this movie had it. It had the sauce. It was saucy, and then it stopped. It stopped being saucy. It was no longer a buttered biscuit. And what's sad about it is that it only got that way at the hour and 11-minute mark. This movie is an hour and 34 minutes. And in between that 11 minutes and 34 minutes, in that little space of time, it lost me. And that's kind of disappointing because this film has had positive reception and is kind of praised for what it's doing. And I was with it for a good hour and 11 minutes. I really was. But that last chunk just completely took me out. So the movie that I'm going to talk about is called Monolith. And it's a Shudder film. It came out in 2022. The way that this movie feels is like it was the OG Undertones before Undertones. But instead of creepypastas that you follow on the internet, it's aliens and conspiracies and creepy artifacts. So I was already sold because the concept of someone digging into something they shouldn't and getting so obsessed with it that they just take it beyond the point of return, that's my bread and butter. Mainly because it's relatable. If I see something that I am like tunneling in on and I want to learn more, I don't really care how dangerous it is or how bad for me it is. I will. This is kind of where this movie had me. I was like, this is going to be it. I'm really going to love this. So it follows a journalist who has been canceled because she published a story without making sure that the story that she was publishing could be proven and can be validated by other research. So in the eyes of the public, it's false information. But in her eyes, she knew that the person that she was outing was in fact a corrupt individual. Nonetheless, that doesn't matter. And so now she's kind of stuck doing her own thing. And so she's created a podcast where she tracks stories that are somewhat otherworldly, have otherworldly undertones, pun intended. And in this one, she's following this object. They call it the black brick. And supposedly this brick is like darker than dark. It's blacker than black. Like when you look at it, it almost looks like it has no edges. It's so black, it looks like a void. The movie follows her for the first 2 acts. Very slow pace, very much akin to Undertone, where it's just her in her house. She follows these different calls. She tracks these different people. Every single one of these individuals is suffering from a level of hallucination, or an inability to get rid of this object that is like possessing their life and fucking with them neurologically and making them feel things and smell things and connecting them to elements of their past that they've tried to let go, or brings out the ugly truths in these individuals that they've been trying to hide. One thing that this movie has over Undertone, right? And it's one of the small things that I didn't mention that I didn't like about Undertone. I still very much love Undertone. But there's one thing I didn't like about it, and it's that the way that the podcasts were set up in the film. It was like, let's talk about this one clip that we're gonna click on and listen to. And then within like 5 or 4 minutes, they were done with the podcast. So it lacked a sense of actually building an episode, even though like every clip we listened to was an episode in its own. You get a feeling like she works on these episodes the entire day. So she'll be like on a phone call and she'll record something, and then you'll get little clips of her later on editing it together. So you get a real sense that this is an investigation in progress, and you are unveiling this story with her, this weird conspiracy that kind of goes in so many directions. She's starting to think that maybe this is connected to some kind of government conspiracy. You start going into biological warfare, right? Or just general one world government manipulation, and it kind of tiptoes into that territory of like secret societies. Like, could we, without really going there, but you get the idea of like, oh, this is the framework that we're going to grow from, is this conspiracy idea. That idea really got its hooks in me, because I think anything involving government conspiracies and this alien artifact, in my head I was probably creating something a little bit more in depth than what I got, which had a lot to do with probably why I didn't connect with the ending of this movie as much. This movie does a good job of sprinkling little elements of curiosity throughout the entire movie. Whether it be some person who has a brick talking about what it's doing to them and then warning her that she should probably stop pursuing this because she's going to get more than she bargained for. You get an idea that she's like not very much an empath, and it's very subtle. Like she's not an outright bad person, but she is someone who is driven by ambition so much that she is willing to make a promise and then break it for the story. Like, she's that kind of character. And there are moments of that where she'll tell a character like, no, I'm not recording, and tell me, and she'll be like, okay, and then we'll get a close-up of the soundbar and the editing software like she's still recording. So she's that kind of character. But as the film progresses, you start seeing it take a toll on her. Somehow there is a connection to her history that she doesn't remember. And there's a full circle moment for her character that I appreciated, because then you start leaning into the duality of repressed memories and trauma. And a lot of movies, a lot of horror films like to take that subject matter and turn it into something horrific. Is it a little bit overdone? Yeah, I think since Hereditary, fucking hell, I think a good chunk of horror movies a year are explorations of grief, which I'm all for. Exploration of character. I think what this movie had going for it at the start was a good medley of, well, here's some legitimate conspiracy and mystery, but then there's these subtle glimpses of like a birthday cake and these sort of intangible images that have no connective tissue till later on, that you're like, okay, how is this going to wrap around the main story thread? There is a reveal, and that reveal and those images and the conspiracy all come together as one. And that was a very high point for me. That's when the movie peaked, because then after that, the exploration of conspiracy dies flat, doesn't really go anywhere, and we only focus on the revelation, right? And the problem with only focusing on that revelation, and spoilers ahead for the ending, because I don't think the ending is the point. I think the meaning of its ending is the point, and this is where it loses me. At the end of the film, she realizes the connective tissue between this object and her childhood, and something that she did that she has to accept. In that moment of acceptance, the monolith, the brick, appears itself through her. I won't tell you how, because it's a pretty cool, like, little body horror moment. Not super crazy, but it was cool. And from this brick, a doppelganger shows up. And it is a version of her that is alien in nature, simply in how it behaves. It looks like her, but it's not her, obviously. The film, at that point, turns into somewhat of a conventional chase movie, which at this point, this movie had never explored anything outside of just the world of conspiracy horror or suspense. Everything was just inside the house with her podcast, and, one Zoom call that kind of led to something creepy. But at this point, we haven't had like direct action. And I thought that, yeah, we're going to have something now. There better be something crazy at it. It really doesn't get any crazier than that. And when it ends, it's so absurdly sudden, because in that moment, she's accepted a part of her character. We get moments where we realize she's not a great person. So when the brick, the black brick shows up to her, my mind was like, okay, so is this like a metaphor for her acceptance? Now it's showing itself to her, and now she has to like fight the worst version of herself. Okay, cool. That's deep and all, right? We did it in Enemy. We have this doppelganger moment, and it ends with her killing it. And I thought that we were going to have this like weird, ambiguous moment where we don't know who survived, because they're doppelganger. Like, there's a lot of shots. There's like a quick cut of shots of her, like, of them rolling around and choking each other. And you're like, okay, so there's going to be an ambiguous moment where we realize, like, we don't know who's left alive. Maybe it's the doppelganger, and maybe this is a story about how if you repress memories too long, they become the antagonist and they control your life. But it's pretty dead on that, like, it's her. She survived. That's it. And I was like, this is such an abstract, out of nowhere turn of events for a movie that's been pretty straightforward, with some subtle elements of exploration of memory suppression and character growth. Your first two acts are so just dreary, slow burn podcast horror with a very interesting mystery touching on elements of government conspiracy and lies and alien life forms. And what you end with is the most unattached, out of touch ending to a movie that never established itself as being that kind of movie. I don't see it. And you had a strong two acts, but now you're out of touch with what you were presenting to me. And my expectations were set there. Maybe it's my fault for having expectations. God forbid I have a couple. And I'm all for having ambiguous endings where you have to explore the sort of gray area between good and evil, truth and lies. Like, I get that there is a gray area to character development that is fun to explore, but this movie just wasn't that long or that deep to explore it. It was deep in its subtlety and in its nuance to present these ideas, and therefore the ending and its answer should have been just as nuanced. But it wasn't. It was kind of like in your face. And then we let go of all these interesting horror bits that could have been explored, that could have really put could have gave this movie a sense of completion if you answered any of those questions, any of them. The whole movie is an investigation, yet we walk out with no answers. If the whole movie is built on the premise of investigation, and I'm invested in that investigation, you cannot let me be blue-balled at the end with no answers, except ones that I come up with myself, if you haven't established that your movie is that kind of film. So, overall, I think that this is one of the ones that I can go like, I don't get it. I really don't. And it's only because of that ending, because the first two acts really were tickling the pickle and wetting the whistle. Up until I knew what the ending was, I was thinking like, this is a good hour and a half film. But I easily think now, knowing the ending, that you could have easily made a really good 15 to 20 minute short out of this and ended it there. Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, man, that's it. That's all I got. That's all I got to say about Monolith. If you've watched Monolith and you feel completely different, please let me know that I suck. I'm rambling and going in circles. Let me know if you feel the same. Let me know if you completely disagree. I will see you tomorrow. And as always, I will see you at the movies.